Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Don from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And the next time you need a part for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the intake manifold on this 2002 Chevy Suburban. It has a 5.3 liter GM V8. Process is basically the same on any truck with the 5.3 liter V8.
And the items you'll need for this is a new intake manifold from 1AAuto.com, flat blade screwdriver, 8mm and 10mm socket and ratchet with an extension, E6 inverted Torx bit, fuel line disconnect tool, and in this case it's a 3/8 inch, pliers, vacuum, penetrating fluid, and a torque wrench. Start off by removing the 8mm bolt that holds on your engine cover. And it pulls free, and then using a flat blade screwdriver, just loosen up this hose clamp right here and this hose clamp right over here. Now you can pull the hose free, pull it free from this side, and then just lift it up and pry out the hose from the intake hose. And then it's free. Now remove these three 8mm bolts right here, and we'll fast forward as Don does that. And now remove these three 8mm bolts right here. Next, disconnect these two harnesses. To do that, you just pull up on the tab and pull them free. Then pry this hose right here free. And then remove these three 10mm nuts. Lift up this bracket and pull it aside. And then remove this 8mm bolt right here. And then just pull that bracket aside. And then disconnect this hose clamp. And do the same thing back here with this one. You want to make sure you disconnect that harness as well. Pull that aside. Do the same thing back here until this set of harnesses loosens up. And then just remove this 10mm nut right here. And then you can just pull that set of harnesses aside. And then pull up the clip on the harness for your fuel injector, and then push the tab on the harness and disconnect it, and repeat the process for the other 7. Now just loosen up this fuel line cap. And then using a flat blade screwdriver and a rag, you want to just put the rag over it, push the tab on the fuel bleeder, and it should spray out just a little bit. It'll release the pressure, replace the cap, and come over here and just pry off this clip. And then using a fuel line separator tool, you just want to push that all the way in. And for this one it's a 3/8 inch. And then once that's pushed all the way in, you can pull the fuel line free. And then it just pulls off, and you put it on the fuel line below it, and repeat the same process. Take a pair of pliers and push the teeth together on this hose clamp and slide it down the hose. And then pull the hose free. And then just remove this series of 10mm bolts along each side of your intake manifold. You can kind of see them, they're down below the fuel rail there. And we'll just fast forward as Dawn removes these. Lift your intake manifold up and out, and you will have to maneuver a lot of harnesses and wires and everything, but you just want to get this out as far as you can get it to go, which at this point should be right about here. Once you get to this point, take your EGR and just feed it through the harnesses and out. And once you fed it through, you can just lift your intake manifold up and out. On the left is the new intake manifold from 1A Auto. On the right is the old one. You can see they're identical and they're going to fit exactly the same. Transfer over this hose by just prying it free. And then push it into place on your new intake manifold. And then pull up your map sensor. Just use a flat blade screwdriver to pry it up. And then just push it into place right here. And then using one of these self-threading screws that comes with the new manifold, just tighten in a bolt to hold the map sensor in place. Push the teeth together on this clamp and slide it off so that you can pull that cap free. Then push the teeth together on this clamp and slide it back, and then pry the hose free. And then get that clamp and pull it free. Slide the hose clamp onto the hose and then push the hose back into place. Just push in the teeth, slide the hose all the way back, and release it. Now twist in these studs into your new intake manifold. And then tighten them up with an E6 inverted Torx bit. Now remove these 8mm bolts holding on the fuel rails. Now just pry the fuel rails up and off. And then just pry this hose free. and your fuel rods will lift up and off. Pry off the O-rings on the end of each of your fuel injectors. And we'll just fast forward as Don does this. Wipe down each of your fuel injectors with a rag. And then replace the O-rings with your new O-rings. And we'll fast forward as Don does this. Spray penetrating oil in each of your fuel injector holes. Then line up your fuel rail and push the injectors down into place. And we'll fast forward as Don replaces those two 8mm bolts that hold the rail into place. Using pliers, just remove this cap and then push this hose into place from your fuel rail. And it's a good idea to just vacuum up the top of your engine block. On the bottom of your new intake manifold, just remove these 10mm nuts. And we'll just fast forward as Don does the rest of these. Set your intake manifold back down into place. And then just feed this hose down and pull it out through the other side. Now disconnect your EGR by just pulling out on the clip with a flat blade screwdriver and just pulling the hose free. And then feed that hose through the side of your intake manifold. And then just maneuver it down and into place. And we're going to fast forward as Don continues to do this. You just have to move the cables and wires around until you can finally get it to set down. And it does take a second, but it will go down. Now reconnect this hose. And just using pliers, slide that hose clamp back up into place. And then reconnect this bracket. And you want to just line this up and push it back onto those studs. And then just replace those nuts. Take the EGR valve and push it back down into place. And then replace the bolt that holds it there. And then reconnect that hose. And reconnect your other hose to the top of the intake manifold. And replace this bracket. And replace the bolts that hold it into place. reconnect this hose over here. And then replace this bracket and the bolts to hold it into place, and then just tighten those up. And then just replace each of these long 10mm bolts that line the side of your intake manifold. And then just tighten each of those up. And you can see that we use a variety of different extensions just to help get there. You can use a longer one for these ones, and then as you get further back you may need to use a shorter one. And it does help to have a flashlight too. Now just make sure you reconnect your fuel lines. And then put those clips back into place to lock them.
Okay, you want to torque the manifold bolts, start in the middle and go across, and then work your way around the manifold in a counterclockwise pattern. And you want to tighten them on the first pass to 44 inch-pounds and then 89 inch-pounds.
And now just reconnect each of your fuel injectors. You just want to push the harness in, then replace that clip and push it down into place. And we'll fast forward as Don does this to the other fuel injectors. Lower the intake hose back down into place. And just push it back. And then tighten up those two hose clamps. Double check that all your harnesses are connected and all the hoses are connected, and then replace your engine cover. And once you get it lined up, just replace that bolt and tighten it up. Then you're all set.
We hope this video helps you out. Brought to you by oneaauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.